So, welcome to another casual conversation. Today, we're talking to Tim Perry, the Director of Practical Law for Asia and Emerging Markets at Thomson Reuters. Tim, welcome to a very casual conversation.
Thank you, Horace. Lovely to be here. Lovely to chat to you.
It's good to chat to you as well. So, just before we started recording, we were talking about the dying state of Facebook. What's your hypothesis? And I know it's not your bread and butter, but what's your hypothesis for why Facebook is dying?
I think it's become too many things in one place. And the parts of Facebook that work and that are still needed and necessary are almost sort of splintering off and becoming their own thing. You've got, and Facebook's been acquiring companies, so that this is, made actually a bit faster, but you've got those who really want to be using some sort of technology to share images of their life and show what they're doing. And we always use Facebook, this is my status, this is where I am. Now you can do that on Instagram, or you can use Twitter and have political arguments there if that's what you want to do. You want to get into your rants, Twitter's the place for that, not Facebook posts. If you want to communicate with your older parents or your grandparents, Facebook still kind of does that for you. There are parts of Facebook that work like a really effective marketplace. And if you're doing, you're buying and selling of stuff, you can do it on eBay, you can do it in Facebook Marketplace. Facebook Marketplace is probably going to continue to live on and become its own thing. But Facebook as a large sort of all-you-can-eat platform where you go and do all your digital stuff is no longer where people want to be. You've got discrete apps for discrete things that you want to do in your life, and that's where people will continue to go. Unless you're older than us, and you kind of just want to go one place and do just all there, and then it's just simple because you can post your photos and you can message your children and realize that they're not getting back to you because they all used the application.
That is a hilarious description of what is happening at the moment. And you kind of led us to a really interesting point. And I didn't know we were going to go here. And it's the idea of platformization versus point solutions. And in legal tech, something that's been happening over the last couple of years is this debate over, do we provide a kind of a one-stop shop, or do we provide point solutions that solve specific tasks really well? What's your take? What do you think is the future of the market?
There's such a tension there, isn't there? There is such a tension because on the one hand, you can have a whole bunch of things that kind of encapsulate a lawyer's workday, and they can all be there in one place. But if they're not really good at solving the pain point, then even though the lawyers got them, they won't use them. And you're going to be producing inefficiency by providing a technological solution which doesn't tick all the boxes enough to actually have people engage with it. Even if it would get them sort of 75%, there is within, I think, the user market, because people are not experts in technology, they're experts in their job, right? Technology needs to be kind of invisible to them. They're not going to be looking for, well, if I go to the platform and it will give these things for me, then I'll use it. And maybe it's not the perfect answer. Let's go, oh, forget it. I'll go and find a point solution online via Google that will give me the thing that I want now, right? Whether it's content, whether it's a process, people are looking for a thing, I'll go and find it, I'll just use that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm not trying to shill for my company, but I'm just giving you an example. There's a product that we have called ClearDocs, right? Which is it's not my product. I don't work on ClearDocs. It's an Australian product. What it is effectively is precedents for non-lawyers, right? It's a product that effectively was designed for accountants, because accountants can't give legal advice, right? Accountants can't give legal advice, but they often want to be able to provide the client with a simple legal document. So this product, it's been signed off by Maddox. They're the lawyers sitting behind it. You answer a questionnaire, it spits out a precedent. That's what you use, and you can then go and give that to your client. That's what it was designed for. Really interestingly, over the last 12 to 18 months, because people Google and thought, oh, I need a precedent for a self-managed superannuation fund trust. Yeah, Google, pop it up. We're seeing from our data analytics a whole bunch of small law firms that are accessing these documents. Like, they don't need them because they're lawyers, they can draft them themselves, right? And many of them subscribe to products either from us or from other companies that provide them with precedents. But this is a really easy one to use. It's not part of a platform. It's just a discrete, point solution. You get the precedent, you answer the question, it gives you the precedent, and you can send it off. It's very simple. And there are lawyers out there who are using that because they Google for it, rather than the solutions that are baked into the platforms they subscribe for and spend lots of money on. So I think just
Wow.
coming back to the question, there needs to be a platform environment because lawyers have to work somewhere. But that platform would be better placed to do some things well and integrate with other point solutions that do other things well, rather than, I think, trying to be all things to all people. Because if you try to be all things to all people, you'll become Facebook and no one will use you. You'll
Right.
be the province of your parents.
You become nothing to everybody.
Exactly, exactly.
It's such a fascinating thing that you've just described, because integration has become one of those hot topics. And one thing we didn't quite talk about when we started this conversation is this video blog is focused on two things. One is, how do lawyers become better lawyers? And the other is, what can technology do? So this idea of a platform that does a few things really well and then integrating with point solutions that can do other things even better, I think it's a topic that probably deserves its own conversation. But I'm going to take us back to the ClearDocs example that you gave, because I want to ask you what your view is on that platform, and maybe scratch a little bit deeper. Do people find it because they are looking for the right content, or are they finding it because they are looking for something else? What's driving the search results?
It really is content based. People are looking for a precedent, and the number of people who will go, "Oh, I need to draft the self-managed super fund trust deed is a good example. You know, I need to draft this type of deed. If I haven't got experience in that myself, you know, where am I going to find an example? I've got a trust deed that I use, but is that going to do the job for, you know, for self-managed super? I'm not sure. Do I want to do lots of research into it and figure out whether it's going to work? That's going to take a lot of my time. Maybe I'll just Google and see what comes up. Oh, look, here's an online place where I can just buy, you know, for a one-off payment, the document that I want, and it's signed off by another law firm. It's probably going to be fine.
Right.
Yeah, it meets a point of need, and I think it's because they kind of target those precedents that are the ones that, you know, accountants traditionally have wanted to use. They're the ones that maybe are a little bit off the beaten track for your general commercial lawyer, and so it can just be easy to kind of just Google and find something. I mean, if you Google for precedents, it's amazing what you can find. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time kind of Googling just to see what's out there. But there's a lot of things that people put out there, and some are great and some are not so good, and some are endorsed by professional associations and some are not. You know, you've got great suites of corporate documents that have been put together by you know, venture capital associations, and they're awesome and they're freely available for people who are in the industry and want to use them. And if you're looking for stuff, people might want to look at that, and if that's not going to meet your need, then where else do you go?
So interesting point there. How do you tell good content from bad content?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a
It
difficult
is.
one. Because you either need to be getting it from a source that you trust, or spending your own time to verify that it is right. I mean, it's like, you know, I've got kids, right, and they're at school, and back when we were at school, Horace, you know, going back to the old days, you know,
right, 1930s and earlier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of my own experience, if I was doing research for a school project back in you know, early years of high school, you know, I'd go to the school library and I would find books on, say, Nazi Germany or whatever it is I'm researching, right?
Encyclopedia Britannica, and then there was Encarta on CD.
Exactly. And you had to get them on CD-ROM and you'd put it into the machine and you'd look it up.
Oh, and there's a little music when it starts, right? A little chime.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But they were sort of trusted sources of knowledge. You relied on the fact that, you know, not only did the text have detailed footnoting and annotations, but it was published by a reputable company. That reputable company would be staking its reputation on putting this document out and spending a lot of money in producing the book or in the encyclopedia. So you would trust that they would eliminate errors. Nowadays, of course, you've got all sorts of stuff online, and, you know, Wikipedia is one source, and there's other sources that you can go to. And I'm trying to understand what's motivating my son's research habits has been really quite illuminating, because, you know, initially it was a case of I just Google and I find a thing and it's the first thing in the list, and so therefore it must be right. But, you know, and Wikipedia can be quite good, but you've got to go through and you've got to go, okay, well, what are the source documents? Where are they getting this information from? Is it correlated by other results that I can find online, are they coming from the press? Are they coming from some random blog by some person that I cannot verify the identity of? Well, maybe that's not quite so reliable. And it's the same process that you have to bring to legal research. You know, you're doing you're Googling, you're trying to find, you know, answers to legal questions. Do you have trust in the source of that information, or are you going to be having to spend time? I think, you know, I may have said this in other fora as well, but there's a cost to relying on information that you can't that you don't know the source of, that you can't verify the source of quickly, because you either make a call and assume the risk that maybe it's not right, and that risk can be, you know, quite expensive for you or for the person who's relying on the legal services you're providing, or you spend the time and incur the cost of verifying the resource, doing the double checking, comparing it to other available information, and that, you know, either way you're spending resource, whether it be your time or the assumption of risk.
There are so many threads there. I mean,
Sorry.
No, it's fantastic. Like the uprising of Wikipedia, the critical thinking that people need when they're faced with information, the ability to verify and what is considered credible. Is it content? Is it authorship? Is it something else? And then this idea of reducing the equation down to cost.
Yeah.
Right. That is neat. I haven't heard you say that before. I haven't heard anyone say that before, but it makes sense, especially from a business perspective.
And I think, you know, when we think about, you know, solutions like obviously with Practical Law, it's a content solution, and we sell it in a subscription model. You kind of have to articulate these costs, because when you front up to someone and you say, you know, you can subscribe to Practical Law, you get this content, you have, you know, access to, I think, the brains of the writing team who are creating this content, keeping it up to date, and here's the price tag. And they go, well, that's money, right? You want me to put my hand in my wallet and spend money now? And you kind of have to say, well yes, because if you don't, well, how are you getting your content? Where are you getting it from? And what are the hidden costs that you're not taking into account? Because it's not a case of these dollars or nothing. It's these dollars or the cost of your time, the cost of the risk you assume, the other costs that are there as part of your, you know, efficiency or inefficiency in doing your job. So it's that broader sort of, what is the investment you're making, and how do you calculate the return you're going to get, and what are you comparing it to? It's that sort of mental journey you kind of got to go on in order to make an appropriate decision about whether you want to buy, you know, our product or another product that provides a solution to a content need or a process need, right?
What is the most challenging part about trying to bring someone along this story, this journey of explaining, here are your costs today, here are your costs tomorrow, why don't we talk about it and settle on an amount you're comfortable with? What's your take on these pricing conversations with customers?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think it all comes down to how you're able to explain the value of your product.
Mm-hmm.
Because once there's an understanding of value, then it's not about you know, here's the number and I like it, I don't like it. It's, well, this is the value I'm going to get. How do I get that value? And then what am I giving up to secure that? I mean, I had a conversation with a customer a little while ago, and it was really interesting talking to them, because they had, you know, everyone's got a limited budget. They were an in-house team. They had a limited budget of what they could spend on solutions. And they had decided to invest in process innovations. So they had spent money on process innovations because they've been able to see the value in what these innovations are going to do for the way in which they got instructions from their business, the way in which they managed the work within their legal team. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff, right? The way in which they were able to keep their documents and their own internally generated know-how ordered. So that's what they kind of spent money on. What they weren't wanting to spend money on in this particular case was additional content solutions. And in a way, although they'd created a lot of value by taking on those process innovations, that value in terms of their ability to use their time effectively was eroded by their not taking on an equivalent content solution, because whenever they needed to think about stuff which was not within the narrow confines of their own deep expertise, their process of gathering that information was very inefficient. So they were almost saving themselves time to be inefficient in their research. Getting to the value part and going, okay, well, yeah, were all those solutions the right ones for you to purchase? I mean, individually, they make sense to the process. But when you look at your business unit as a whole and the tasks that you do as a whole, actually maybe the saving of time or money you're getting out of that particular application is not worth what you're giving up in not being smart about your research solutions. And trying to have those conversations to recalibrate can be quite tricky. I know there are some consultants out there who work with in-house teams in particular, and they're really good at kind of coming in alongside the business and taking a little bit of the pain out of it, because they kind of bring an independent perspective, and they're not selling for any particular vendor. They're just there to kind of provide a consulting service and go, okay, well, we've seen what departments like yours do. This might be good, this might be good. And because they've already got that kind of position of trust and not coming in as a vendor, even though often they will get a kind of a subscription, or there's some sort of there's some sort of financial incentive for them to sell stuff. That's not the mindset with which they come, and it's not the mindset with which they're heard. So I think there's an openness to listening to what they have to say that may not be there when a customer is speaking directly to a provider of a solution. That's kind of a hurdle that we have to overcome through value.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. The kind of trustedness of the voice plays a role when they kind of the idea that maybe there's a vested interest, or there's an ulterior motive. But something else you said was quite interesting, and I'm going to link it back to what we were talking about earlier with platforms versus point solutions versus integration, and that is in the legal tech space. Mostly, what people are talking about are process-based technologies. The technological solution that people are providing leads to improved efficiency, usually by changing the way people work. Very rarely do people talk about content as a part of that equation.
Yeah.
I think that's a big missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. If the assumption is true that people are not thinking enough about content today, what do we do to help the legal sector or the legal profession?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the core of my role in a way, because obviously my solution is a content solution, and it really is about trying to explain the value and efficiency that we bring, and the value of that to a customer. I think looking over my legal career, I started at Keyword Mallesons, as did you, before it was Keyword Mallesons. Back in the day, there's Mallesons, Stephen Jakes, and we've both moved through different firms. We've been at internationals, we've been at large domestics. We've seen different things come and go. Timekeeping is one which was really interesting. There have been various solutions for tracking time spent during the day, so that you can effectively get your timesheets in and bill the right clients the right amounts. That's always been one of those solutions which is interesting, and they've changed over time, right? There's been the start-stop clock that you do yourself. There's been the smart solution that sits in the background and kind of keeps track of, well, you were on Google Chrome for this long, you were on your email for this long, and you were emailing these people. It can kind of spit data at you that you can then refine without actually having to do the start-stop clock thing. Back when I started, we were using pen and paper, to track your day. What am I doing time to time? You can, at the end of the day, go, okay, then I have to manually enter my timesheets for the day. So different things have changed over time. But ultimately, what you've needed to do is account for your time so you can bill your client, right?
Yep.
From a professional services point of view, for all the process innovations you want to bring to bear, at the end of the day, you have to be providing legal services to your client. And those legal services are based on your expertise as a lawyer and your ability as an expert lawyer to take raw information about your client's situation, the applicable law, market practice, regulated guidelines, and turn that into an answer to their question. Now, you can bring to bear lots of different process tools in that process, but ultimately, you're going to have to provide an answer. And to provide an answer, you need to be able to understand those different categories of information, filter them, and apply critical thinking to how they interrelate in the given situation. And to do that, yes, you'll need to use your expertise, But you've got to get that stuff quickly, right? And you have to get on top of those different areas of information quickly in order to be able to do that high-level thinking. So do you want to waste your time going through free websites or instructing a junior to do 3 hours of research, which you then have to review and send them back to redo? Or do you want to go to a content solution that has, you know, enough credibility and trust behind it that you know you don't have to do deep interrogation of whether it's right? You can use it to give you a quick guide to the law or the guidelines from regulators or whatever it is in the situation that you're in. You can use it to signpost the key cases and ledge that you need to go look at for more detail, given the bespoke scenario that your client has got. Content is always going to be so crucial to being able to do your job right as a lawyer. And I think it's making sure people understand that journey that they go through intuitively, just being able to get them to step back and go, okay, well, this is actually what I'm doing each day. Okay, no, I do need that content. So how do I get it? Where am I getting it now? You know, what am I doing to get this stuff? You know, am I getting cases from a trusted database, which, you know, treats the cases and updates them and makes sure that, you know, there's a digest behind it and I can see flags if things are being overturned or not? Or am I going to a free resource and finding the case and then go, okay, well, now how do I check that this case is still current and hasn't been overturned or overruled on the point that I care about? And there's a lot of research that goes into that, unless you're using a solution which you can trust, which already has done that work. It's the legwork, right? Lawyers are so busy. You're constantly, you know, getting calls from clients. You're trying to run matters. You're trying to do deals. Who's got time to stay up to date on the minutiae of what's coming out of the courts, the legislatures, the regulator every day? Only lawyers whose job is to do that and nothing else. And that's what my team has. And that's what, you know, I think the best content solutions do, whether it be on a sort of know-how basis like ours, or you know, whether it's like a case and legislation database, or if it's a, you know, a clause bank. You know, you have to have the right stuff. It has to be accessible at the point of need, and you have to be able to get it quickly and know that it's right. That's what's going to be helping you to generate value for your client.
It sounds a little bit like Adam Smith's specialization, right? Like you want to kind of, if you think about law like a production line,
Yeah.
Your everyday lawyers, the ones who, you know, everyday people think about, are the ones at the end that assemble and put together the advice. But all the raw materials, everything that goes into that final production assembly process, has to be done by someone else. Like, who's farming the wheat? Who's pulling the iron from the ground?
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
So I'm going to make a little flippant comment here, and I don't know how true this is going to be. Is Facebook dying because the content on there is no longer interesting?
Or is it dying because there is such a flood of content that it is not possible to efficiently winnow out the stuff that you don't care about from the stuff that you do? And because it's so hard to winnow out the things that you care about, you ignore it entirely and you follow people on Twitter or Insta, or, you know, you use WhatsApp to do your messaging.
It's two sides of the same coin, right? Like if there's too much content, well, that's bad content. If there's not enough content, that's also bad content. And it's kind of this Goldilocks zone of just right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. Now you're going to be, you or one of your colleagues will be speaking at AltaCon very soon, and so
very exciting.
Yes, I don't want to steal too much of that thunder, but let's round off this video by just quickly talking about what you will be discussing at AltaCon this year.
Sure. I think it's going to be very much a content solutions perspective on legal tech and the role that content still has to play in this world of information democratization. I mean, as we've been saying earlier on in this chat, you know, there's just so much information now, and it's so accessible. It's not like the old days where, I keep talking about the old days, when I worked in a law library as a summer clerk, and you know, I had to do the loose leaf filing, and you know, every couple of months we'd get a new CD-ROM of digest to put in the CD tower at the computer stack in the library. We'd come and, you know, look at the needed cases.
The good old days, right?
I know, but now it's just, there's so much out there. So what is it that we can do to better serve our clients and get the right information? And just stepping back from that, what are the trends in the way in which lawyers have been spending their money and adopting new technologies, be it, those day-to-day technologies, well, not dissimilar to this. I mean, a couple of years ago, when you had conference calls on international deals, you were using those star phones in the middle of the table, right?
I remember those star phones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone sounds like they're about a million miles away.
Exactly. And then someone's got the wrong dial in and you're waiting on the call and they're on a different call entirely. And that was part of the call. So I remember sitting around tables at DLA Piper trying to get counterparties on the line, from overseas at 1 a.m. and they're all on the wrong conference call. We're emailing each other saying, which conference call have you dialed into? No, this is the one you have to use. Over the last 12 months, because of the pandemic, everyone is on Zoom or Teams or this Google platform. There's some sort of online meeting technology that they've all adopted, and that's been an innovation for law firms, and that's very quickly, and they've taken that on. So that's one style of spend people have been undertaking. There's the general process efficiency products people have been buying, and then there's content. So the ways in which that spend breaks down has been really interesting. You can kind of see some trends to who was ready, who got ready quickly, who's cutting their spend, and where they're cutting their spend. And that sort of data can be quite insightful, I think. So I'm going to share some facts and figures around that, and then we'll go into my pet subject of legal content and how it can really empower lawyers, if you buy it in the right way and interact with it in the right way through technology to do their job so much better and more efficiently.
Wow, Tim, that is amazing. I mean, I can't wait to see it. I think the data that you're going to present is going to be so telling. And I don't know how many people in the market would have access to data like that. So for you to share it is so kind.
It's a pleasure.
So I'm looking forward to it. And Tim, thank you for your time today. It's been such a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
I do miss our coffee conversations. So hopefully soon we'll be in the same place at the same time to have a coffee together.
Look forward to it. It'll be on me.